that this is the problem with the settlements.
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, I must say I agree with Omar on one point, and that actions speak louder than words. And the 8,000 rockets fired at Israeli civilians who are doing nothing. They're not settling anything. They're not encroaching. They're not attacking. They're just living. They're just trying to have their kids go to kindergarten. I think it's true that actions speak louder than words. By the way, the words would be nice. You're right. It's not just that it's problematic language. Oh, it's problematic, and we'll just kind of put it away. It's not problematic. It is the charter. The charter of the organization calls for the destruction. And an interview here, an interview there, or an intimation or a feint is nonsense. There is statement after statement after statement, not in the English world, but in Arabic. We will never accept these people. And the rockets speak louder than words. But you know what? Not only do the rockets speak louder than words, but the bombs from the West Bank also spoke pretty loudly. So I'm for recognizing the principle that actions do speak louder than words.
And the bombs of black South Africans also spoke pretty loudly when they were bombing civilians during the apartheid era.
Sorry, let's hear from a Leslie student. I really want to, so hands from a Leslie student if we could. Yes, go ahead.
Regarding the missiles and the mentality of the Israeli soldiers of killing. I was 13 years old in 88 when I was dumped out of my house and beat by 30 soldiers for nothing just because it was in my house. I wasn't throw stones or missiles to anybody. I'm a civilian, like any civilian in those settlements that you are talking about, but I was there and I was beaten by 30 soldiers. None of them say stop, he's a boy or he's a child. None of them. The second comment or example I want to give is one of my far cousins in 2002 during the invasion to the West Bank, which is the same what happened in Gaza. The Israeli soldiers were going from house to house, and in order to enter the houses, they were bombed the door of the house. They were not knocking at the door for anybody to open the door for them, but they were really bombing the doors. One of those bombs came directly in the belly button of this far cousin who has 5 children. The Israeli soldiers entered the house. They were smoking and laughing, saw her bleeding on the floor. Her husband was begging them to call the ambulance, but they didn't. She did right away. She was killed right away, and she died in that accident without even any of those soldiers, any of those innocent soldiers, do anything or call anything. You can, if you want, on YouTube, you can see that story and many other stories, which is the same what happened now, what happened in the last year in Gaza. So you give excuses to the Israeli soldiers to go and kill Palestinians and ask why we cannot live. What is that mentality we need to change in the Israeli society first for us to be and live there?
Look, thank you. First of all, the conduct that you describe is atrocious. I'm not even going to say if it's true, because I'm sure that the conduct that happened to you, of course, no, I'm saying, that's what I'm saying.
It's me, I'm talking about.
That is why I'm saying, I'm assuming it is true. I know it must be true because you're saying, and that is why it is atrocious. Now, I hope that you will apply the same anguish, the same outrage on behalf of those innocent people who have been blown to pieces between 2000 and 2005. Imagine, I'm sure you can, think about it, what it feels like to be having a Passover celebration and to have 80 people basically have body parts flung all over the place. You're in a bus, and this is what happens. You are right to be outraged. It is an atrocity what you have described. And by the
soldiers beating you.
Yes, and by the at any age, by the same token, I hope that you will find it in your heart to acknowledge that the deliberate obliteration, in fact, since we're invoking Amnesty and Human Rights Watch did ultimately in 2002 issue reports condemning the annihilation of Israeli civilians as war crimes and crimes crimes against humanity. But the victims were people like you. And I'm simply asking that you understand that it's unacceptable to stay silent on either side about that. In Israel, as you know, there are God knows how many human rights groups criticizing government. You've got investigations, you've got prosecutions. Is it perfect? No. But I'm going to give you my fax number. It's 617-542-2241. Will you please fax me the investigative reports and the issuance of indictments against those who are responsible in the West Bank and Gaza for the targeting of Israeli civilians? Would you do that?
Omar.
It is absolutely not true that there are investigations when Israelis kill Palestinians or abuse them. If you look at B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organizations, or you look at Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, they're all consistent about a culture of impunity in which Israelis mete out punishment to Palestinians. I'm really confused about the invocation of Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch when they go your way, but then when I ask you to condemn Israel's war crimes and crimes against humanity, all of a sudden you need somehow a more neutral source.
No, if it's a crime against humanity, if something is a crime against humanity or a war crime, I don't need anybody to cause me to condemn it. I'll condemn it. But the issue is when you have allegations being made, for instance, the targeting of a UN school, you know full well that the UN then, days after the accusation was made, had to apologize and say they made a mistake because it wasn't targeted and it wasn't hit. You know that. So that's the kind of thing that makes me just skeptical.
I would actually appeal to him to tell you about what those reports would actually say.
That's what the
UN
UN
for that
said.
matter, all of you, I really strongly encourage you to go home and look up what Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch say about the Gaza massacre that had taken place during Operation Cast Lead. Just the one last comment I really want to make is that there is this fixation on the terrorism of the oppressed. Anybody could do this. You could talk about the terrorism of black South Africans during apartheid. You can talk about the terrorism of those living under Nazi occupation. You could talk about the terrorism of Indians under British colonial rule. Or you could look at the broader picture that is actually causing all of this to happen. Israel's atrocities are far greater than anything that the Palestinians have handed out to Israel. Just the systematic torture that takes place in Israeli prisons on a regular basis is absolutely abhorrent. And that entire apartheid system in which Palestinians are not afforded any rights at all is the reason why we have a conflict in the Middle East. And you have to resolve that core issue rather than just trying to denounce an act here or a terrorism act there. That's the issue. Look at the broader picture. Occupation and apartheid are the reason why there is a conflict in the Middle East.
I'd like a question from a Leslie student. We're on their campus. Is there a Leslie student who'd raise their hand? Yes, in the back, sir.
What do you think about the arms embargo
Is there a question to each of our panel members? Hello?
Yes.
The question of an arms embargo. Okay, Jeff first and then Omar.
Look, I think it is, it's never wise to disagree with one's host. But I think the notion, I've been unwise before. I think the notion that there should be an arms embargo of Israel because it had the temerity after 8 years to try to stop the rocketing is silly and degrades the credibility of those who are proposing it. But I have to say that when I hear that, and I know this is my last word on the subject, that the cause of the conflict is the apartheid system in Israel, I think, now, what am I reading that's incorrect? So we've just heard that there was a Palestinian state rejected in 1948. There wasn't any apartheid system. There was no presence any place in the territories in between 48 and 67. And there was no apartheid system, and there was this conflict. Why in God's name was that? So take what you hear from some folks with a salt lick worth of salt.
Omar.
The reason why there was conflict early on is because the Palestinians were being dispossessed of their land to create a Jewish homeland. People were being pushed out of their territory, and then Jews coming in from Europe were taking over that territory. That's why the conflict was what it was then. Today, there is a consensus on how to resolve the conflict, and there is an Israeli apartheid system currently in place. In the Palestinian territories that Israel has no legal title to, Palestinians are systematically denied permits to build any homes, and when they build them without permits anyway, Israel comes along and destroys them, while Israelis are allowed to build illegal Israeli settlements on that territory. That's discrimination and that's apartheid.